All right, I think we're good to go. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today for our webinar on local SEO for senior living. My name is Boris, and I'm an SEO specialist here at Citizen, and I have also Kieran joining myself today. So we'll be covering a couple things for you today, kind of give you some tips and tricks, things to look for. Basically, today we'll be covering content optimization, so basically the text on the website itself, the citations and listings, as well as the Google Business Profile verification, and a little bit about optimization for the profile as well. And we will have time for questions afterwards as well. So if anything comes up, just drop it in the chat and we will get to it at the end. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, so big question right off the bat, why is SEO even important to consider? So a couple different metrics for you here. 22.6% of online traffic comes from local searches. 46% of all Google searches are local searches, and 78% of local searches lead to an offline conversion. So as you can see, there's just really a lot of volume on the organic side of Google itself. And people are looking for senior living for whether it's maybe themselves eventually or for one of their loved ones. And so you do need a way for these searchers to actually find you. And how you do that is through optimizing some of the things that we'll cover today. And as it shows there as well, there is a lot of influence from what people find online in an offline conversion. So even though you, let's say, are perhaps referred to someone who comes for a tour, they might actually be doing research online in the meantime as well. And so you want them to be able to learn about you as well, just to ensure that they're really sort of building that trust that they would have had from referral. So it's super, super important to ensure that your website is optimized properly so that people can actually find you when they're looking for you. And quick note, SEO is often compared to Google Ads because they kind of work sort of two sides of the same coin. Basically, Google Ads is pay-per-click, so you're paying literally per click to the actual website. This can be anywhere between $125 to $350 to acquire a client, depending on the service and competition. We've seen it as high as $800-900, whereas SEO is really just organic traffic, so you don't pay for any of the visitors. Having said that, SEO is not a replacement for Google Ads and pay-per-click in general because they're different channels and they're both super important as part of your overall marketing strategy. However, there are kind of strengths and weaknesses to both. So that's why it's really important to understand both sides of these marketing avenues. So first thing we'll kind of cover here is optimizing, really starting at the homepage. This is really the foundation of the SEO authority for your entire website. The homepage is often what's most highly considered by the algorithm. It also attracts generally the most number of backlinks, which is a sign of authority for the algorithm as well. So really, this is where it all starts because what the algorithm sees in the homepage really does flow to the rest of the website. And so depending on how this aspect is set up, you can either provide additional benefit to the rest of the website, or perhaps you're holding it back. So when we look at optimizing the homepage, the biggest thing we really look at, first of all, is what's called the H1 title tag. So it's basically the title of the page. And really, you want it to be very clear for anyone that's searching, but also the algorithm, what the website is about. And basically, you just want to list what lifestyles you offer as well as the location. And one thing to note is that I wouldn't go crazy and list, if you have multiple lifestyles, I wouldn't list everything. I'd pick one, maybe two of the bigger ones you service there, and then just list location. So we have an example here in the bottom left. You can see we simply said assisted living and memory care in Freehold NJ. This is a very clear indication to the algorithm what lifestyles are offered and where, as well as anyone who is reading will know immediately what to expect from this location. So it's very important to be clear in terms of both aspects. And then similarly, when we look at local keywords in general, you do want to follow this format of lifestyle in X location for the rest of the inner service pages. So basically, you would do the same thing for those inner service page H1 title tags. So for example, if you do have assisted living and memory care as one of or two of your major lifestyles, the separate pages, you would then say assisted living in Freehold NJ, and then the memory care page would be memory care in Freehold NJ. And then you'd obviously have the rest of the page talking about those individual services. The other thing you want to look at as well is to ensure that the content on the paragraphs of the rest of the pages are also optimized. So basically what that means is just ensure that you're using sort of that variation of lifestyle in X location throughout, where possible. You don't want to look spammy or just not be helpful. But you do want to really describe as much as possible what each page is about. And then what this allows you to do as well is you can actually link from these inner pages contextually back to the homepage. And what that really means is just finding a space within that optimized text where it makes sense to link back to the homepage, where it's a natural flow, both for the algorithm, but also, again, anyone that's actually reading that page as well. And then this basically sort of creates a bit of a roadmap for the algorithm, because you're telling it that these pages are connected. The words that you use will sort of indicate as well what the next page that it flows to is about. And then this is kind of how you start to build that topical authority for the specific website itself. And then third aspect, super important, is to ensure that your location or contact page contains what we call an NAP, which is super important kind of across the web. And that is something that Kieran will now tell you more about.
Thank you. All right, so NAP, or NAPWA, as it is sometimes known now, is effectively just a fun acronym that translates to any mention of your business information online. So this term is often used interchangeably: citations, listing, or your NAP, anywhere you find it. Effectively, all that really is it's any mention of your business anywhere online. This can be anywhere from Google listings to Apple Maps to even social media listings or Yellow Pages listings. Effectively, you just want to ensure that you are able to own as many of these citations as possible, so that your name, address, and phone number, and your website, which is where the W comes in, is going to be consistent across the board. Having consistent listings, citations, your NAP listings, matching is really key, as when people are searching in whatever search engine they're using, if the phone numbers or addresses are incorrect, especially in a Google search, that's going to be very difficult for Google to understand your listing. For example, if your phone number is different on your website than it is on your Facebook page, all of those will come up in a Google search when people are looking for your business. And it can be difficult for the algorithm to understand exactly where you are or how people can contact you. So if they are inconsistent, it can cause your business to be not being shown to as many users as possible. So really critical to ensure that you have all of these as consistent as possible across the board. All right, and then next piece here is just kind of some citations and listings to prioritize. So you really want to make sure, as I mentioned, that you control as many of your listings as possible. This is just really so you can really have a hold on accuracy and make sure that everything is as accurate as possible. In this first column here, we have listed what are considered some of the higher, more important citations or listings to have correct or as up-to-date as possible for the senior living industry. This is where the most people are searching. So just Yelp, Apple Maps, Google Business Profile, Yellow Pages, Facebook, Yahoo, and MapQuest are some of the ones that are most used in the senior living industry. This is a lot, so we did want to call out just a couple that we would recommend prioritizing first before you kind of go and look at getting every single listing that you have on the internet. Google is really important. The Google Business Profile is kind of the biggest key here. It's the biggest search engine in the world. It's built into so many phones, browsers, devices, Google Homes. This is really the default map listing for many products. So at minimum, you really want to make sure your Google Business Profile is as accurate as possible. And a little bit later in the presentation, we'll give you some tips on how to really look and optimize that. Another one to look at is Yelp or Apple Maps. It's kind of interesting because Yelp actually feeds into Apple Maps listing. However, it is still a good idea to own your Apple Maps listing separately. So if you need to own one of them, prioritize Yelp, because Apple will pull the information from Yelp for their listing. However, creating an Apple ID for your business and owning your Apple Maps listing is something that we would recommend as well. And then the last one is Facebook/Meta. We know that this is not a search engine, but it is the biggest social media platform, and a lot of people do actually use the Meta platform as a search engine, even if that's not its primary intention. So it's always valuable to have your information up to date there. Having a Meta page for your business, you don't need to be necessarily monitoring it as closely. However, it is still a good listing to look at having, simply because a lot of people are using it as one of those places where they're searching for information. One thing we did want to call out, as we know that call tracking, go backwards here. There we go. Sorry about that. One thing to note about call tracking is we know that it's really used a lot in the senior living industry. As much as we love call tracking and knowing where our phone numbers are coming from, if you are using it, make sure that you are setting up call tracking on the back end of all of these citation management services, rather than using a different call tracking number directly in the listing. This is something that can kind of confuse the search algorithms, especially if you are showing as a completely different phone number on your website or on your Facebook page, just to try and figure out where those calls are coming from. We do recommend using a dynamic number insertion on your website at minimum if you are using call tracking. But if you are able to own your listings, Google, Yelp, Apple Maps, you can actually set up call tracking on the back ends of all of these to see how many clicks and calls are coming from those sites. So just make sure that if you are planning on using call tracking in these instances, set it up on the back end of these so that it does keep your listing consistent and you keep showing up as much as possible in searches. All right. And then the last thing we are kind of going to talk about today is some quick Google wins that you can hopefully action today and then go forward with. And these are all pretty simple wins that you can make that hopefully you can action today and see some results from. So the first thing we did want to call out is make sure that you do have access to your Google Business Profile account. This is something that is overlooked by a lot of people because you can suggest edits to Google Business Profiles when you aren't the owner. However, being the owner, you have so much more functionality. You can see reporting, you can get really granular with the edits that you are making. So you really want to make sure that you know who owns your Google Business Profile. On top of that, you do want to make sure that your owner is verified with an email that is not going to leave your organization. We've seen a lot that it could be set up from a personal account that someone has from the organization and has since left. We've seen it. You can claim Google Business Profiles when you are not affiliated with the business as well. So you really just want to make sure you know who the owner of your Google Business Profile account and affiliate it with an email that's not going to leave. So like an info at account, something like that, so that you can also see when reviews are being left and it's never going to leave. So you'll always have access to it. The next piece is to make sure that account is verified. They are two different steps in the process, and verification is just continually getting a little bit more complicated as time goes on. So if you're not verified, you want to make sure that you're leaving today to look at doing that. And on this next slide here, I have two kind of options that you can tell whether or not you are verified. So when you search your business, if you are verified, you will see this kind of little blue check mark that's on the right-hand side there that says you manage this Google Business Profile. This is something that will show you do have access to make edits. Conversely, this one on the left, it just says suggest an edit or own this business at the bottom. So if you don't have the little check mark showing that you manage the Google Business Profile, make sure that you are hitting own this business to start the verification process because it can be rather long. So we want to start that as soon as possible. This is just one more screen that'll show you if you need to start the verification process because you can't own it without being verified. Effectively, you'll get this big error kind of at the bottom and you'll see this is kind of the page that you'll start to notice if you are able to manage and make edits to your Google Business Profile when you search for your business. So this will come up in the Google account when you search that is affiliated with whoever manages your Google Business Profile. We're not going to walk you through verification today because it can vary based on the authority level of the Google Business Profile, but we will send out a document at the end of the webinar for all of you who attended today that will walk you through the process and kind of give you the tips on getting started. So hopefully then that will help you out. All right. And then last thing is some small changes and big wins you can make today. Once you are fully verified and you own the whole Google business profile, this is what the page looks like that you're going to be able to see. So if you can't see this, you don't own your business profile and you're not verified. So here you can kind of see it's pretty obviously different. There's a lot of spaces where you can make a lot of fun changes. You can check performance, you can set up some ads, you can add services. There's a lot that's possible on this screen, and I'm going to just pass it back to Boris, and he's going to kind of dive into some good things to look at for you today.
Perfect. Yeah. So I also want to just reiterate the importance of actually getting access and not only verifying, but also just figuring out who owns that profile. Because some of the biggest struggles that we see is really just trying to find out, how do we get into this profile? So it shows it's verified. Google says, it'll give you kind of a snippet of the email that owns it, but we just can't track it down, right? No one knows who set it up or who manages it or whatever. And it can just be a very long process to have to either then re-verify or track it down or whatever the case may be. So having at least the information of which email address is the primary owner is super, super important, especially when it comes to cases, for example, where you might get a bad review that, could use the context of you responding to it, or perhaps just, someone leaves a review that's not necessarily affiliated. And having the ability to actually respond and manage is super important for reputation, right? So if you do nothing else today, please track down who owns it. And if no one owns it, please set it up and, make sure that it is listed somewhere how to actually access it. So once you've done that, you might be wondering, okay, now what do we do? So once you do log in, as Kieran kind of showed you briefly, you'll see this little menu show up when you search the location name. And you can see there's a little in the top right, kind of like a little yellow circle. That's basically just showing the level of completeness for this profile. So if you click on complete info, that little blue link, it'll basically walk you through the icons below, most of them anyways. And it's just a few pages, doesn't take very long at all. And you can kind of just go through this and make sure that the information is correct, or maybe something has changed, so you can update it to be correct. You can add, maybe you've changed services that you offer, lifestyles or amenities, whatnot. You can add those as well. You don't have to fill everything out. Not necessarily all the fields will apply in each case, but you do want to ensure that you're filling basically for as much completeness as you can. So not only will this allow the algorithm to better understand what this location offers, and then therefore it can better match the search to the actual profile itself, but also for anyone that's looking through, right? They might be looking for a specific amenity, and if you do offer it but don't have it listed, then you're potentially going to lose out on that lead as well. So similar to kind of the website optimization that you talked about, you just want to make sure that you're adding as much information that's useful as possible. So again, this takes maybe 10-15 minutes maximum, not super long. Just kind of walks you through as well. And then one other thing you can do that's really good is check out, it says that Q&A, it's on the second row there, kind of halfway. So basically what the Q&A is people, any person really can just submit a question, but also an answer to a question. And so what you want to do is have a look, see if there are any questions. If there are, make sure that you're answering officially from the profile. That way that people who read it are getting the correct information from the correct source, and not necessarily just a third party that, is browsing and decided to respond based on their experience or whatnot. That's super important. The other thing is you can see next to the Q&A icon is the add update icon. This one is really good for posting pretty much anything you got going on. So like, for example, any events that there might be that people could attend, you can add. One thing we like to do is any monthly blog content, we will sort of generate a summary post that talks about it, kind of a preview. And then we'll post that as well with a nice image and a link to the actual blog post for anyone who wants to read more. So good thing about that is that you're showing the algorithm that you are actively updating, which Google likes to see. They want to see their users actually engaging with their services. And as well as, again, if someone is reading, they might gain additional information. Any blog content might, establish yourself as an expertise to the reader, because they see that you're talking about various different topics related to senior living. So that one's the add update icon is a really good one to use regularly as well, at least on a monthly basis is kind of my recommendation. So that's where I would start. Again, first thing, make sure you're verified and know who's actually verified or which account is verified. And then secondly, start there. And then just sort of maintain it ongoing.
Wonderful. Okay. So we are all wrapped up with our content, but we wanted to leave you with a couple key takeaways. If you don't kind of take anything from this, these are kind of the big things. SEO does account for an average of 83% of total visitors to a senior living website. It's so many small changes you make will have a huge impact because most people are going to find you through organic search. So SEO is not really something that we recommend ignoring, and even the smallest of changes can have a really big impact for your business. Another thing is to make sure that your major lifestyle options and your location are in the heading or H1 on your homepage. This is just to help users, potential residents, find you easier in search. And please know who owns your Google business profile. This is something we really want to leave you with. It's very important to make sure that you have access to edit things if needed. So if you do nothing today, please figure out who owns your Google business profile. All right, and that's everything we have for you, so we can open up to some questions.
I do have a question here from Cole. It was back before you talked about call tracking, but she asks, should we not use call tracking numbers then, I believe in reference to making sure your NAPWA is all set up?
So you can definitely use call tracking numbers on your website. There's something called dynamic number insertion that you can kind of implement. It's a tag on the back end that will change the phone number kind of after a brief moment of when someone goes to your website. So if they are choosing to call from your website, it is that call tracking number. Where we wouldn't recommend using it is putting it into like a Google business profile or a Facebook page or an Apple Maps listing, just to try and see who's calling from there. Because most of these services do have a way to track that on the back end. So you, especially in the Google business profile, there's a little performance add-on there, and you can actually see how many people have called directly from your Google business profile. So call tracking is good. Just make sure that if you are using it, use dynamic number insertion on your website. Any other questions?
Yes. Claire asks, can more than one person own/manage a Google business profile?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So yeah, definitely multiple people can manage. So what you want to do basically is have the ownership, the primary ownership, be assigned to sort of like a general or internal email address itself. And then using that email address, you can then delegate managerial access. So maybe you have a team member or someone else that's in charge of it. And then if they either change roles or perhaps leave, you can then revoke that access and assign to somebody else. That way, the organization itself will always stay in control of the actual profile, and then you're not going to end up losing it, like in some situations. But also allows you to then have, someone whose actual job it might be to manage it, doing the day-to-day actual management under their own email address as well. Any other questions? No.
Right. But if you guys want to just let them know we're going to.
All right, so
Perfect,
since we
yeah.
have no more questions, we can give you all back 5 minutes of your day. Just wanted to call out that Citizen will be attending Smash at the end of the month. So if you are attending that, look out for our booth. We'll have a team there, and you can stop by and chat with them about how we can maybe help you out with your SEO or just connect with them. So we want to thank you all for coming today and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.